Imagine descending into the deep, dark ocean, not just to explore, but to make history. This isn't a scuba dive. It's not a vacation. It's a mission to reach one of the most haunting places on Earth, the wreckage of the Titanic. But this time, it's different. This isn't 1912. It's the 21st century, and a small group of adventurers have set out in a vessel unlike any other. They're not just exploring the ocean floor. They're diving into legend, guided by a dream, and driven by risk. At the heart of this story is OceanGate, a private company promising to make deep-sea exploration more accessible, thrilling, and deadly. Their submersible, Titan, wasn't like other submarines. It wasn't built by NASA or the Navy. It was built by innovators, outsiders, risk-takers, the kind of people who believe that pushing boundaries is worth everything, even their lives. But dreams, especially the boldest ones, can sometimes lead to tragedy. And what began as a daring expedition to visit the most famous shipwreck in history turned into a chilling modern disaster. This is the story of Titan, the OceanGate disaster. The Titanic has always fascinated us. For over a century, her story has captivated the world, a tale of ambition, class divide, romance, and tragic loss. Her wreck lies over 2 miles below the ocean's surface, deeper than Mount Everest is tall, in a place where sunlight never reaches and the pressure could crush steel. It was once considered impossible to visit. But for those who dared to dream and had the money, it became a reality. OceanGate emerged with a promise. You don't need to be a trained Navy diver or a billionaire tech mogul to see the Titanic anymore. You just need $250,000 and the courage to climb inside a sub called Titan, a 22-foot tube, bolted shut from the outside, with no room to stand and no escape once you're inside. The sub was experimental, built not from metal, but carbon fiber, lightweight, strong, but untested at extreme depths, controlled by a video game controller, guided by software, not military-grade instruments. Guided by software, not military-grade instruments. Many experts warned, this is dangerous. This isn't how deep-sea vehicles are built. But OceanGate's CEO, Stockton Rush, had other ideas. That he believed that safety regulations were holding back innovation, that rules were made for the cautious, and he wasn't cautious. He was a visionary. Visionaries don't always listen. In June 2023, Rush led a crew of 5 aboard Titan. Among them were Hamish Harding, a British billionaire adventurer, Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a veteran Titanic diver, Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son, Suleman, from Pakistan, both excited for the once-in-a-lifetime trip. They launched from a ship above the Atlantic. They began their descent, and then, they vanished. No signals. No pings. No word, just silence. What followed was a desperate, global search. Nations collaborated. Sonar buoys dropped. Ships scoured the surface. Planes scanned the horizon. People around the world held their breath, hoping against hope. Were they alive? Trapped? Lost in darkness? The clock was ticking. The oxygen on board was limited. Every hour that passed tightened the grip of fear. And then, days later, wreckage was found. Crushed, scattered, broken. The Titan had imploded. Instantly. Violently, all 5 souls were gone. The world mourned. Not just because of who they were, but because of what they represented. The spirit of exploration. The hunger for discovery. The willingness to risk everything for something greater than yourself. But questions followed, loud, angry, urgent. Why wasn't the Titan properly tested? Why ignore the warnings? Why put lives at risk in a sub that didn't meet basic safety standards? And at the center of it all was Stockton Rush, the man who believed innovation mattered more than caution. Some called him a pioneer, others, a reckless dreamer. But one thing was certain. His creation led to one of the most chilling tragedies in modern exploration. The story doesn't end with the implosion. It begins there. Because what really happened inside the Titan? What went wrong? What secrets did OceanGate keep? And what does this disaster reveal about our obsession with danger and our desire to go where no one else has gone? Stay with us as we dive deeper into the mystery, the ambition, and the fatal decisions that led to the OceanGate disaster. To understand how the OceanGate tragedy happened, we have to go back To the beginning, OceanGate was founded in 2009 with a bold vision to make deep-sea exploration available to the public. Not just for scientists or billionaires, but for adventurers. For dreamers. Stockton Rush, the company's founder, had always seen the ocean as the final frontier. A former aerospace engineer, he once said, "If we're going to push humanity forward, we can't wait for government funding. We have to take risks." And take risks. He did that. OceanGate's early submersibles were successful in shallow waters. But going to the Titanic? That was a whole new level. The pressure at 12,500 feet is over 380 times what we experience at sea level. That's enough to crush steel like paper. Most deep-sea vehicles are made of thick titanium or specially engineered metals, but Rush had a different idea. Carbon fiber. Lightweight. Revolutionary. But carbon fiber had never been used at these depths. Never. And there's a reason why. Under repeated stress, it can fail, silently, suddenly, fatally. Engineers raised concerns that deep-sea experts warned him. Former employees even quit, fearing a disaster was inevitable. In fact, one former director of marine operations at OceanGate wrote a formal complaint in 2018. He claimed Titan was unsafe, that it needed further testing. He was fired shortly after. Still, OceanGate moved forward. They dismissed industry standards. They avoided third-party certifications. They didn't even pressure test Titan to the full depth it would dive. Rush believed regulations were outdated, barriers to innovation. That he famously said, "At some point, safety just becomes pure waste. You can either be safe or you can be innovative. But you can't be both." A chilling quote in hindsight. The OceanGate expeditions were promoted as life-changing adventures. Wealthy clients were offered the chance to visit the Titanic wreck in a high-tech sub $4.250,000. Marketing videos showed sleek animations, glowing testimonials, and inspirational speeches about pushing the boundaries of science. What the public didn't see. The inside of Titan. It wasn't glamorous. It looked like the inside of a large metal tube, with a single window, bare floor space, and no seats. 5 people sat cross-legged, shoulder to shoulder, in complete confinement for hours. There was no GPS, no escape hatch, and no certified safety rating. Titan was steered using a modified video game controller, and its navigation relied on text messages sent from the surface ship. Yes, you heard that right. A text message system was used to guide a submarine 2 miles beneath the ocean. And yet, people went. Because despite the warnings, despite the risks, the pull of adventure was stronger. Stronger than fear. Stronger than logic. In June 2023, Titan made what would be its final dive. The 5 on board included Stockton Rush, the visionary Hamish Harding, a daring billionaire explorer. Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a Titanic expert with dozens of dives under his belt. Shahzada Dawood, a Pakistani businessman, and his son, Suleman Dawood, just 19 years old. Suleman wasn't sure about going. In fact, reports later revealed he was nervous. He didn't want to go. But he joined the expedition for one reason. It was Father's Day. He wanted to make his dad happy. The Titan launched. Within the first couple of hours, contact was lost. What followed was one of the most dramatic search operations in modern history. The U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, Canadian vessels, aircraft, private companies, all joined the hunt. But it was too late. On June 22nd, after days of silence and hope fading fast, the U.S. Coast Guard confirmed Titan had imploded. Instantly. Catastrophically. There were no survivors. No remains to recover. Just pieces of the sub found scattered near the Titanic's resting place. 5 lives lost in the blink of an eye. The public reaction was swift and emotional. Some were angry. How could this happen in 2023? How could such a dangerous sub be allowed to operate? Others mourned. These weren't reckless tourists. They were fathers, sons, friends, explorers, and some were stunned. Because the very thing that made OceanGate appealing, the thrill, the innovation, the sense of possibility, was also what made it deadly. But this wasn't just a one-time mistake. The deeper we look into OceanGate's operations, the clearer it becomes. This disaster wasn't just possible, it was predictable. In Part 3, we expose the red flags, the ignored warnings, and the pressure to deliver results, that the Titan tragedy didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't a mysterious accident. It was the final chapter in a story filled with ignored warnings, rushed decisions, and a refusal to listen. And if you look closely, you'll see the red flags were everywhere. In 2018, a group of 38 industry experts from the Marine Technology Society sent a letter to OceanGate's CEO, Stockton Rush. The message was clear: you are putting lives at risk. The submersible needs proper certification. This project must be paused until more testing is done. But the letter was brushed aside. Rush argued that certifications were outdated, that innovation required freedom, that safety regulations were slowing progress, and so he pressed on. Even within OceanGate, alarm bells were ringing. David Lockridge, the director of marine operations, was one of the most vocal critics. He insisted Titan needed more testing, that its viewport wasn't rated for the depth of the Titanic wreck, that carbon fiber posed a serious risk of delamination, a silent, creeping failure that could end in collapse. His concerns? Ignored. Instead of listening, OceanGate fired him. Lockridge later filed a whistleblower complaint detailing his fears. But by then, the project had momentum. It was already being marketed as a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The pressure wasn't just from the ocean depths. It was from investors, deadlines, publicity, and pride that in the world of deep-sea exploration, every vehicle is tested, retested, and certified. It's not optional, it's survival. Yet Titan was never pressure-tested at full depth. OceanGate claimed the design was unique, too innovative to be tested the traditional way. Instead, they relied on sensors inside the hull that would supposedly detect early signs of failure. But by the time those sensors picked up a problem, it could be too late. In fact, in one earlier dive, Titan experienced communication loss and was lost for hours under the sea. Still, no changes were made. And it wasn't just about the sub's design. There were logistical issues, delays, technical failures. In one expedition, Titan had to abort a dive due to battery problems. In another, the thrusters stopped working correctly. Clients who paid $250,000 were often disappointed or downright terrified. One described the interior as feeling like camping in a porta-potty. Another said the experience was terrifying, especially when they lost connection and couldn't tell if they were moving or stuck. But still, OceanGate promised the next dive would be better, more polished, safer. But it wasn't. In the pursuit of innovation, they gambled with lives. Titan wasn't just a submersible, it was a symbol of unchecked ambition. The people inside weren't careless. They were curious, brave, hopeful. But they were also trusting a company that said everything was under control. And when that trust was shattered, it took 5 lives with it. What makes this story so haunting isn't just what happened. It's how easily it could have been prevented. If warnings had been taken seriously. If proper tests had been done. If safety had been prioritized over headlines. But it wasn't. And now, 5 families are left with nothing but memories. When the Titan sub imploded, it didn't just claim 5 lives. It sent shockwaves around the world. And in the silence that followed, the world began to ask, how could this have happened? What followed wasn't just mourning. It was outrage, scrutiny, and a spotlight that OceanGate had never expected. The U.S. Coast Guard launched a formal investigation. News outlets dug through OceanGate's records. Lawyers circled. Lawsuits loomed. And families of the victims, who had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, were left asking painful questions. Were our loved ones misled? Was this tragedy avoidable? And why did no one stop it? Obstacles, and safety as a suggestion. OceanGate. The answers? Point to a company that saw warnings as obstacles, and safety as a suggestion. OceanGate, deep sea exploration accessible. But in doing so, he ignored industry norms, skipped certifications, and silenced internal dissent. The result? An implosion that not only crushed a sub, but shattered trust in the entire field of private exploration. For the world watching, the tragedy became a symbol, a reminder that ambition without caution leads to catastrophe, and that in places where failure means death, like space or the deep ocean, there's no room for ego. There's only room for science, discipline, and respect for nature's power. Meanwhile, the families grieved in silence. Each passenger had a story. Hamish Harding, the billionaire adventurer who'd already been to space. Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleman, who joined the mission as a bonding experience. Henri Nargeolet, the Titanic expert who knew the wreck better than anyone alive. And Stockton Rush, the visionary who believed in his dream to the very end. They were explorers, but they weren't reckless. They believed in the safety they were promised. They believed they were in good hands. But in the end, belief wasn't enough. The Titan disaster exposed a bigger problem. What happens when innovation outpaces regulation? When private companies are allowed to operate in extreme environments with no oversight? Where were the agencies? Where were the guardrails? And how many more Titans are being built right now, in labs, garages, or startup offices, without anyone watching? After Titan, the world took a hard look at exploration. The romance of pushing the limits was now shadowed by the price of getting it wrong. And as new laws were proposed and new restrictions debated, one thing was clear: the rules had to change. Because the ocean doesn't forgive mistakes. And when things go wrong, there are no second chances. At the bottom of the North Atlantic, over 12,000 feet beneath the surface, the Titanic still sleeps. Her rusted bow rests silently in the cold, dark ocean. A relic. A graveyard. A mystery. For over a century, she has drawn explorers, scientists, filmmakers, and dreamers. People like Stockton Rush. People who couldn't resist the call of the deep. The Titan submersible was never just a machine. It was a symbol of a new era. One where exploration was no longer limited to government missions or billion-dollar organizations, but something private citizens could attempt. It was daring. It was modern. It was risky. But the deep sea isn't a frontier you conquer. It's one you survive, if it allows you. We lost 5 men that day, but their stories live on. Their courage, their curiosity, their desire to witness something few human eyes have ever seen. They faced the unknown, not with fear, but with fascination. And while their journey ended in darkness, their story sparked a global light. A reckoning. A call for better safety. A call for accountability. Since the Titan disaster, the industry has changed. More eyes are now watching. More rules are being drafted. And for the first time, deep-sea tourism is being questioned, not celebrated. Engineers and experts around the world are speaking up. If we are going to explore the last great frontier on Earth, we must do it right. With caution, with respect, and with the humility to say, we don't know everything. Because the deep ocean doesn't care about your wealth, or your resume, or your ambition. It doesn't make deals. It demands respect. And when that respect is absent, the consequences are permanent. So now we remember the Titan not just as a tragedy, but as a warning. And maybe, just maybe, as the turning point that saved future lives. Because in exploration, it's not enough to dream big, you must also build wisely. Listen closely. And protect those who follow your vision. The Titan rests now, scattered in silence across the seafloor. Just miles from the Titanic herself. 2 wrecks. 2 tragedies. Decades apart, yet bound by the same lesson, that even in the deepest parts of our world, hubris sinks. And only truth floats. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful true stories from history and beyond. Do you think deep-sea exploration is worth the risk, even after disasters like Titan? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.